82% of landscape contractors out there are living paycheck to paycheck or are barely able to actually pay themselves every week. Hi, I'm Andrew Latursky with the Ultimate Landscape Academy, and over the last 14 years in the landscape industry, I started a business, I scaled that business, and I exited that business. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I'm here to help contractors like yourself avoid those mistakes and grow your business quicker and to higher revenues than I ever did. So today, episode number 6, we're talking about the 82% of landscape contractors out there who don't pay themselves or are living paycheck to paycheck. Man, being in the industry for as many years as I have been, I hear that and that stings. Like, that hurts because I was one of that 82%. I hate being part of a statistic like that, but I was. I did not track my expenses. I did not manage my overhead. I had no clue what a non-recoverable expense was or what something that should be billed back to the client looked like. I honestly knew how to do projects, and that was basically it at the beginning. I was skilled, and that's what a lot of you out there I think is really skilled contractors. Maybe you worked for somebody else, and I say this because I did, and you got fed up there, right? You weren't making enough money, or you weren't being treated well enough. Maybe they weren't paying attention to your goals. Like for me, I wanted to work my way up to a crew leader, and I even wanted to go to a project manager, and then. But in the company that I was working with, who was kind of a mom and pop shop, they were the kind of top of the food chain, right? They did all the estimating and the sales, and they did the project management and stuff like that. And they just wanted people below them who could do the labor. The problem is I had goals. I wasn't going to just sit in a labor position my whole life. And so when I approached them and I said, hey, I want to grow, I want to move up the chain, there wasn't an option. At that point in time, I decided, hey, I'm going to go and do my own thing. Of course, the usual, yeah, good luck. And here we are 14 years later. But what I'm getting at is that you want to grow. You may have been stuck somewhere else, and now you're doing your own thing. And that's great. But you have come into this business with a skill set that a high level installer has, but not a business-minded individual. So this is where I think there's a big disconnect in the industry, and this is why we have such a high statistic. Like 82% is crazy, thinking that you guys are out there busting your ass in the hot sun, terrible rain, bad weather, whatever it may be, lifting stuff. Like, landscaping is not easy, yet 82% of you out there have less job security at the end of the day than somebody working at like Walmart, right? That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's not fair. And that's really a big part of what the Ultimate Landscape Academy, why I've created the Ultimate Landscape Academy, because I want to help other landscape contractors like yourself who are struggling, who don't understand the business side of things, actually get a little bit more information, find ways to bring them out of their expert installer phase and bring them into their expert CEO level, running the company on top of it instead of being in it every day. So let's dive into why 82% of landscape contractors don't have enough money to pay themselves or live paycheck to paycheck. And at the end of the day, I've already touched on it, and I think it's business knowledge. But what it really comes down to, I think, is expenses. I don't think that anybody, and this is unfortunate, at any level of schooling ever talks about budget or finance tracking. And when you don't do it on in your personal bank account, at the end of the day, you usually have one method of money coming in, which is a paycheck. And then, yes, you've got a bunch of ways of it going out, but you don't have as many moving parts in your own personal finances. And I think you can get away without having a truly stable understanding of your own. And when I say get away, I mean you get away enough that you are running out of cash, but you're not, going bankrupt. I think you need to take what you learn here and apply it both to your business and your personal finances, but that's going to be for a whole nother episode altogether when we get into talking about how to grow your personal finances. We're on business right now, so I want to stick to the point. And the point is that the financial education and understanding what it means to actually track your expenses is where a lot of contractors fall short. So the number one calculation that when I ask landscape contractors, or number I ask them is what is their overhead, I usually get that confused look, like I just spoke to them in Spanish or a whole nother language altogether, because they're like, overhead. Okay, yeah, what's overhead? And they get that what is overhead? and some of them just can't define it. So overhead at the end of the day, in my opinion, when you talk about a landscape business, what you're defining overhead as is non-recoverable expenses. So non-recoverable expenses means things that you can't charge to a job that are for that job. So things that are recoverable are gravel, sod, pavers, labor on the job site, the list goes on. But everything that goes into a particular job that's required, like when you do an estimate, those are all your recoverable expenses. Things that are non-recoverable that you have to build into your overhead would be things, in my opinion, like your salary. Like you should get paid no matter what happens in your business. If you're running your business, that's step one. So your actual salary getting paid shouldn't be billed to each job as working hours. It should be billed as a flat fee per day that goes on every single job, because you're getting paid. Even if the guys only work 6 hours, you're still getting paid that day. That's the way it's got to be. The other things that go into this are things like office expenses. So if you have administration staff, their hourly wages need to be built into your overhead as well. They need to get paid every day. Each client has to help contribute to them running the business in the back end. Again, you can build this in a bunch of different ways, but I think it's just so much easier to break it down one step at a time. And that's why we have our overhead calculator actually at ULA. It's one of the free templates that we have for landscape contractors. If you do anything for growing your business in the next season, go get this tracker, Ultimate Landscape Academy. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or do a Google search for us. But you can sign up for free access and get the overhead tracker. You're going to want to be sitting down when you do it. I'll tell you that right now, because you're going to realize how many things you didn't think of. But at the end of the day, it's really going to change your business this season coming out, because you're going to notice how often you were forgetting to charge for things. What else can we include? We've got our salary, our administration salary, things like tools. Like, tools break over time. And when you have to buy a new tool, that shouldn't come out of any of your profits, or certainly your own owner's compensation, your salary. That should come out of your actual tool fund. Like, you should be charging every day for tools. Depending on how many you have, maybe it's $10 a day, maybe it's $100 a day, maybe it's $1,000. Like, it depends on the size of your business and what kind of tools you're using, how specialized they are. I think 1,000 is crazy for what we're talking about, but $50 a day is not a crazy expense. If you think about that, over a month, you have roughly 20 working days. So we're talking $1,000. So over a season, you might put $6,000 or $8,000 in that tool fund. And I mean, if you got to buy a brand new packer, especially if it's like a 500 pounder, whatever it may be, there's your money. It's gone, right? If you've got to buy shovels and rakes and, levels, well, you're not even touching on that. Maybe $50 a day is too much. But you got to decide that for your business. Look at what you spent in previous years, and that's what the overhead calculator is for. So what else do we have? We have like tires. You think about tires on a truck. Like, tires on a truck need to be replaced. When they need to be replaced, the way you've probably been replacing them is out of the money in your operating account. And then all of a sudden, when you pay all your other bills, you're like, the money that went to the tires was supposed to be my paycheck. And that's what happened for me for years. And then I started realizing you need to charge for like tire depreciation. This is that, average, like say tires last 4 years in your business, give or take. I need to take the price of a set of tires and I need to divide it by 4. And I need to take, that 25% and divide that by the number of working days in my season. Let's say it works out to be $6 a day. Well, every day I need to add $6 to my overhead so that 4 years from now, the money's been set aside to pay for my tires. Now, I think tracking and putting this money aside into different accounts, again, is going to be a topic for another day. But what I'm getting at is that there are so many other things like insurances, right? You have to pay insurance for your business to cover yourself. You have to pay, at least in Canada, you have to pay like CPP and EI. So that's the Canadian Pension Plan and unemployment insurance. The employer has to pay a portion of the same amount that gets deducted from the paycheck for the employee, but the employer has to match that and even in some cases pay a little bit more and remit that to the government. That can be, 5-6%. It can be a little bit higher sometimes depending on your paycheck. And if you think about like an entire year of paying an employee, if you are forgetting to charge for 6 or 7% of their wages, like if they're making, say, $50,000 a year, like 1% of that $50,000 is $500. So if you're going to go up to like 6-7%, like that's up to like $3,000 to $3,500 per employee that you're forgetting to charge for. And if you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 employees, like this number adds up in a hurry. Like it can be $10,000 to $20,000 in a season. Hey, there's some of your money for your winter salary, right? That could be why you're living paycheck to paycheck. So all this stuff goes into overhead. And at the end of the day, I think this is really the number one reason that contractors are in this 82%. I know personally that when I figured out my overhead and I stopped just billing what I thought went to each job and I started including this like extra daily fee. Within about 6 months, all of a sudden there was like a buffer in my account. There was always like an extra like 20 or 30 grand. It kind of seemed like ahead once I had paid all my bills and stuff. And it was like, oh, it's like, that's weird. Why do I have money in the account? Oh yeah, I've been charging for this stuff and I've been building it up. And within one season, I went from struggling to pay myself every week, which was usually the problem I had, and then borrowing money from the business to give myself a bonus to make up for the loss and then not paying bills. It was just a vicious cycle. Probably sounds familiar to some of you. But in that one season, I went from struggling to pay myself and every week to having no problem whatsoever. I made it through that winter. It was really good. And then I even had cash left over actually for the spring to be able to hire new guys and get rolling. And usually that spring crunch is always, again, one of those super stressful times. So that's what I'm going to say when it comes to getting yourself out of that 82%. I think there's some other things in there, when it comes to tracking expenses on your jobs and making sure you're actually billing to your client for any overages, crediting underage for different things. I actually think that the way you estimate also comes into that. Like if you're estimating by the square footage, I think you're missing out on some stuff. It's really hard to track your expenses if you're estimating by the square foot because at the end of the day, extrapolating all those materials isn't the same as going through your list and saying, I need this much gravel, this many pavers, this much, on and on and on. So those all come into it. But really, it's this entire bubble of just understanding your finances and the numbers that go into it. I will say this is the most boring fucking part of running a landscape business is actually doing numbers. That's the way that it sounds at the beginning at least. And then as I talk about this, it probably sounds boring to you. But as you actually start to track these numbers and you start to see money in your account, tracking becomes exciting because tracking means you have money. When you have money, it makes you feel pretty damn good. So change the way you think about tracking right now. Take it from that boring idea to like the curiosity of like, hey, I just want to see how much I'm forgetting to charge for. And you realize that there was definitely amounts that you were missing. So if you've already got jobs booked out this season, it's going to be hard to recoup some of that stuff coming up. But for every new estimate you have going forward, make sure to use the overhead number. Make sure you use our estimating and our job tracker template. And you're going to find that by the end of this season, or even sooner, you're paying yourself every single week and you're not worried about whether or not you've got money in the bank for next week. That's it for this week, guys. We'll catch you next week when we get into a few more topics about growing your business. As always, you can go over to the Ultimate Landscape Academy and you can get our free access to the membership dashboard, get all the templates, tutorials, and more right there. But if you think that doing it by yourself hasn't really been working and you're considering what options are out there to actually work with a business coach, somebody has been through the trenches, who's been in the position you may be in and who made it out on the other side, then we have other options with ULA with accountability coaching as well as some online live classes. So if you have questions, you'll be able to book a call online and I'll get to talk to you soon. See you later.